Hello everyone, so breaking news. By 2034, the national debt net interest cost will be more than $1.7 trillion. Interest spending rivals Medicare for spot a second single largest federal expenditure, behind only Social Security. This interest on the national debt is projected to exceed spending on national defense this year. This is per the U.S. Senate Committee on the Budget. I will leave the link down below. My friends, America is going bankrupt. Furthermore, we're getting to the point where the interest on this national debt will exceed the tax revenue. This is serious. This is dangerous. Think about that senior citizen that goes to the bank to collect their funds that come in, let's say, either biweekly or monthly, or that disabled person, or that average poor American citizen that goes to the teller to collect their funds. And the teller says, well, I'm sorry, you don't have any funds. The American on the other end says, what do you mean? It's the first. It is my time to collect my benefits. The teller says, well, I'm sorry to tell you, but the US government just announced they will no longer be providing these benefits for the time being. America has gone bankrupt. The poor American has a jaw-dropping reaction. He or she cannot believe it. Then they become angry, frustrated. America is done. All of these individuals will be on the streets. They can no longer pay their rents, buy food, maintain a healthy life. They cannot afford the medicine. The government has left them for dead. Likewise, the middle class that's already facing extinction will collapse right after because they have been living paycheck to paycheck. Schools never taught Americans how to balance their budgets. They never set them up for financial success. All of these schools teach us how to get a degree and hopefully get a good paying job, and that's it. But remember, it's not about how much you make. It's about how you manage it. Hence, there will be millions of people on the streets looting for food because they can no longer afford it. The same thing will happen to the pharmacies. They are unable to purchase medicines because the government is not giving them the money to do so, or is able to provide it to them. Perhaps some might even invade homes to be able to cope with the cold winters or the extreme hot summers. It will be a collapse all around. The worst financial crisis in American history, making the Great Depression look like a baby wearing brand new diapers. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. The government will have to send the troops into the streets of America to be able to control or fight the civil war that's already taking place. The destruction of America has been completed. That's just what I'm seeing, guys, but it could be a lot worse. You always have to follow the money. Now, on the other hand, you may have a small part of the middle class who has financial stability, along with the rich, who will suffer too. Not as bad as the other groups, but let's say they may see their investments go down in value to the point where they could also be at the brink of collapse, and some might collapse. At the same time, they will recognize the opportunity in front of them to be able to invest and eventually grow their net worth even higher. But I don't want to make this seem like it's such a good time to be around, because it won't be. It will be catastrophic. The stupid government officials will go to the Federal Reserve and say, you have to give us more money so that we can keep the government and the country running. And the Federal Reserve will say, no, I can no longer do that. You have defaulted on your debt payments. You no longer have an outstanding credit rating, and you are now being rejected. We have to negotiate and see what we can do to resolve this issue, but I cannot give you money until we do that. And that's when I believe this debt has to be restructured. There is no other way around. That's what these idiots will likely do, which will only buy us some time for us to collapse again and again and again. We should have never exited the gold standard. But that's what I am seeing, guys. I could be wrong, and I hope I am. I really do. But the numbers do not lie. So let's touch base about what is happening with this national debt and the interest payments. Let's get started. Okay, guys, so in 2023, interest costs on the national debt totaled $658 billion, surpassing most other components of the federal budget. Interest costs in 2024 will total $892 billion, a jump of 36% from the previous year, and following increases of 35 and 38% in each of the 2 years before that. So what is the pattern that we're seeing? We keep heading towards a massive collapse. That's the pattern. If you didn't know, back on Friday, August 2nd, the stock market hit a $2.9 trillion wipeout due to fears of a global recession and a possible war. But these are just fears. I've been saying that the market is extremely overbought for my liking. So I have been really careful in buying stocks this year. But imagine a complete collapse of the economy. The market will see trillions of dollars gone in a matter of perhaps weeks, if not days. A halting will be set in place to be able to stop the bloodbath, but at some point, that will only make things worse for the stock market. And that's where I told you guys about how those that are invested in the market, such as individuals from the middle class that may have some financial stability along with the rich, will also be affected, but not as bad as the other groups that are in need of an economy to continue running without any issues. The problem is, once again, is that the issues have always been there since we left the gold standard, and we've been using this debt to pay the previous debt bill. And so it just continues to grow into a disastrous snowball that will collapse the United States. But I did come across this X post that I wanted to share with you guys because it is highly educational on this topic.
Last month, interest on the national debt ate up 76% of income tax, meaning 3 out of every $4 you currently give the IRS are actually going to China or Wall Street. The numbers come from my based colleague, EJ Antoni, who sources directly from the Office of Management and Budget. They report that for the month of June, the U.S. government collected $185 billion in individual income taxes, and it spent $140 billion on debt interest. So 3 out of every $4 straight out the back door. Elon Musk noticed, adding, quote, "I'm glad 76% of the income tax I pay goes directly to important things like interest on past government incompetence." On an annual basis, that's up 8 points in a single year. And if it keeps up, the federal government will be paying more in debt interest than it collects in income tax in, about 6 years and 9 months. What's driving all this is that income taxes are actually down, which normally only happens in a recession, while the cost to service the national debt has exploded by 33% in a single year, thanks to trillion-dollar deficits and rising debt costs. Put them together, and in the past 12 months, Washington paid $868 billion in interest alone, on track to hit $1,140 billion in the coming year. For perspective, in George W.'s first year, the entire federal deficit was $158 billion. Now we're paying 5 times that in debt interest alone, and next year we'll be paying 7 times. For even worse perspective, if the federal government actually tried to live within its means, it would have to cut nearly $2 trillion in annual spending, which would mean a 50% cut to everything outside Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. Yes, even the military and those top men at Homeland Security. Sadly, 50% cuts are not on the table, meaning it will get worse. For perspective, it took precisely 192 years for Washington to accumulate its first trillion in national debt. It took us just 100 days to add the last trillion. So how did we get here? 2 men, FDR and Richard Nixon, followed by 50 years of politicians with less willpower than a Wall Street banker at a strip club. So FDR broke the gold backing of the dollar back in 1933, and Nixon finished it off by banning foreign countries exchanging dollars for gold. This meant the Fed could print unlimited amounts of money, meaning it could finance unlimited federal deficits, which is what it did. To illustrate, when FDR took office, the accumulated federal debt since 1789 was just $22 billion. After FDR, that exploded 20-fold by Nixon, and then it exploded nearly 100 times to today's $35 trillion. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. We are not getting 50% spending cuts absent a civilization-ending crisis, meaning the only realistic solution is to go back the way we came, limit the money printing. In theory, of course, Washington could just do this using, say, Milton Friedman's so-called K% rule. But given the incentives to buy elections and reward donors, Washington needs the physical constraint of hard money backing. This could mean backing with gold, as is traditional. It could mean Bitcoin someday. It could even mean a basket of commodities like oil or grain, which would be an improvement. Alas, given hard backing is not remotely on the political radar, we are in for a lot more debt and a lot more inflation. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.
Okay, so a lot to unpack there. Nearly 80% of this tax revenue is being spent on interest. Guys, we're near the end here. I'm not joking. This is wild. You should be sharing this video with everyone you know. The big event is coming. You guys have to be ready for what's coming. Likewise, these expenditures only get worse every year. As you just mentioned, for the record, I will leave the link of the source of that video down below. The bankers took over the US government. We all knew that, but we just let it be because things were working out, if you will. And the dollar's not backed by anything, unfortunately, and we should go back to the gold standard. That's what I believe. I think that would be the salvation for the future of this country, but none of these politicians will do that. Nobody seems to be interested in that anyway. And, well, the Fed will continue to print money like nothing, which will eventually bring us to a total Armageddon-like collapse. Indeed, this spending needs a 50% cut. I will cut even further than that if I could, but it's actually the opposite. We are going to add an additional 50% spending. And that's what happens when you get all of these lawyers elected. And, hey, I graduated from Harvard and this and that. I'm a genius and I'm very smart. And boom, you just continue to build this budget deficit. And hey, as long as everybody's getting paid, just look away. Don't pay attention to the national debt. Well, the next president will figure it out, and the next president will figure it out, and that's how it's going to be until we hit that brick wall. So what's next? Well, I believe we should be informed, number one, and number two, prepare ourselves for what's coming. For those that are living paycheck to paycheck, you need to figure that out first. That's, number one, unsustainable. But at the same time, if this was to come tomorrow, you will be wiped out. And I know it is easy for anyone to say, well, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, don't. Look, I get it. But seriously, you have to try to figure that out first. Because as I mentioned earlier, the first ones that will get hit right away will be the poor, the average poor American, and the middle class that's living paycheck to paycheck. And even that portion of the middle class that has financial stability may be at risk too. But you do not want to be within that first group. I know it is extremely easy for anybody to tell you that, but try your best to prepare. Okay, if the dollar collapses, I understand everything will, but I'd rather be on the side of those that have some backing than on the side that doesn't have anything, if that makes sense. This is extremely concerning, and we all should be looking at this every single time these idiots in the government send billions of dollars to other countries. Know that we are at the brink of collapse. These people have to be voted out. It's like what Warren Buffett said that one time, where someone asked him about the deficit. How would you fix it? And he said, well,
I can end the deficit in 5 minutes. You just pass a law that says that anytime there's a deficit of more than 3% of GDP, all sitting members of Congress are ineligible for re-election. Now you've got the incentives in the right place, right? So it's capable of being done. And they're trying to use the incentive now that we're going to blow your brains out, America, in terms of your debt worthiness over time, and that's being used as a threat. A more effective threat would be just to say, if you guys can't get it done, we'll get some other guys to get it done.
I agree with the GOAT, the investing GOAT, Warren Buffett. I wish we could set up a law where it clearly stated the moment the U.S. has a budget deficit, everybody in Congress should be fired. Get them the hell out as far as you can from Congress and start all over again. New elections to select new members and balance that damn budget. That's the only way, guys, but we know that's not going to happen. So the only thing we can do right now is try to vote them out and prepare yourself at the same time. I told you before that I believe this is done on purpose. You can say that, yeah, incompetence is part of it as well, but I'm leaning more towards the malice side of it, okay? I don't think this just happened by accident or purely idiotic policies. Perhaps it is a mixture. In my opinion, it's been in the works for a long time. Guys, thank you so much for watching this video and for your amazing support. Follow me everywhere. The shoutouts are down below. Smash the like button and subscribe if you haven't already. We'll continue discussing this topic as the numbers get worse, unfortunately. I will see you guys next time.